I am Mother Sylvia, and I'm here with Cynthia Geppert, who is a newish member to St. Mark's, but not by any stretch of the imagination new to the Episcopal Church. And we are in the process of preparing, she is in the process of preparing to retire from her current day job and have a little more time to devote to another piece of her vocation, which is theology. And so we are delighted that Cynthia is going to serve as theologian in residence at St. Mark's. And so you are probably wondering, fantastic! What in the world is a theologian in residence? So, Cynthia, I think it can be lots of different things in lots of places, but give folks a little bit of an idea about what a theologian in residence can do and what you're hoping to do as St. Mark's theologian.
So thanks, Mother Sylvia, for doing the interview, and also you and Father Christopher and Deacon David for welcoming me to the congregation and also in this role, which is really exciting. So as you and I have been discussing this over the last months, we've both kind of learned that there isn't really a definition. And people kind of do different things with it and make of it what the people need, parish needs. So it's a relatively new movement in the church, in almost all denominations, from evangelical to Catholic to Episcopal to, but mainly a lot of mainstream Protestant churches have had it. And the idea is to bring theology to the person who's sitting in the pew or the bench or whatever, and help the clergy with some of the more in-depth theological work that they are certainly trained to do, but don't have the time to do because they're running around doing bulletins and capital campaigns and all the other things that go along. And so it's really meant to be interpreting academic theology by people who are trained to do that, for the everyday faith life of people who are out in the world, encountering God and ethical dilemmas and questions. And already, as we've been preparing, we've had several different parishioners come up with lists of really exciting topics. Part of it is that church membership these days is very mobile. If I ask a group who's still in the faith they were raised in, or were they even raised in a faith? 50 years ago, everybody would probably say pretty much the same. These days, it's all over the place. So we get people at St. Mark's and other churches who have no background or a very different background than a progressive Episcopal church, and have lots of little gaps along the way that, though we have three of the greatest preachers there are, can't be addressed in a short sermon. And then we have lots of different classes for lots of different interests. But this is more allowing people to explore things that they have questions about.
Awesome. I was just having coffee with a UNM student who's one of our middle school Sunday school class teachers, and she told me that last week when Deacon David was absent, the kids brought out the really big questions for her and their co-teacher, namely, if God is loving, why is there evil in the world? I was like,
Yes.
wow, well, yeah, don't hold back. I'm sure we can cover that in an hour, or 100 lifetimes. So there is, I think, among every demographic, people are asking really important questions. And whether they know that they're theology questions or not,
Right.
theology has something to say about almost everything that really matters. So
It does.
Tell us a little bit about your lifelong vocational journey, which has taken lots of twists and turns and prepared you for this moment, but talk a little bit about your own kind of religious, both your spiritual autobiography and your vocational and work autobiography that
Sure. Speaking of 100 lifetimes. So I don't know if you ever listened to Krista Tripton on Being, but she always asks to whoever much more famous person she's interviewing to say something about their spiritual life. So I probably was destined to be a theologian. My mother was a Russian German Jew, and my father was an Irish Catholic. And so that right away gave me some insight into different spiritual traditions and how they compare and not all, and sometimes don't coalesce. And then probably because I had both of those sides, I went to Protestant seminaries. Um, I was a religion major in college. I thought I'd be an English major, and I took a humanities class in religion in high school, and that was the end. I knew what I wanted to do. I graduated in religion and then went on a scholarship to the University of Chicago Divinity School to study the history of Christian thought. And then different things happened. My father died, and I got myself ill and ended up at Vanderbilt Divinity School. And then um, I was serving in the Catholic Church as a what we call the Eucharistic visitors in the Episcopal Church. And I was going out to see some very sick, older, poor folks. And I suddenly had this intuition that I needed to do more holistically to address their suffering. They seemed really sick, and no one seemed to be doing anything. I had no science and math. I was pretty old in my late 20s by then. But I decided I would go to medical school, and took a long time to get ready to do that and then go. Of course, it's a long heck. And then in medical school, got very interested in medical ethics, obviously, because of its theological origins, and finished my master's in religious medical ethics and did my residency in psychiatry. And along the way was, at the time, Episcopal Church, at least in our diocese, wasn't particularly interested in gay people, which I happen to be. As you know, my lovely wife, Dr. Karen Carden, who plays cello with the choir. And so I was ordained in the Independent Catholic Church, and did ministry there, just as I had previously in the Catholic Church, to the extent they would let me. Obviously they weren't happy to have a woman either, or a gay woman, so there wasn't really a home. And so I really have practiced. My priesthood has been as a psychiatrist and palliative care physicians for in public health with veterans who, as you know, have lots of trauma, and for decades now. And a few years ago, got back interested in my prior vocation and finished my doctorate in theological ethics with an emphasis on patristics, Augustine. And my dissertation was published as a book. And so it's actually all about suffering and evil and where we started. And then looking forward to retiring from clinical practice and my longtime work as a medical ethicist, got interested in the idea of doing theology in residence, because where I had gotten my doctorate had a really big emphasis on public and contextual theology. So many of the professors were also in some sort of ministry role besides, so not just stuck in the ivory tower. And I knew Father Christopher from way, way back. And when he was at St. Michael and Archangels, I taught a number of courses for him and for the congregation that seemed to be helpful. So I approached him, and he approached you, and you approached me, and here we are.
Here we are. So the same person I was just having coffee with, I said that I was getting ready to meet with you, and was saying a little bit about you, and they said, well, what exactly does a medical ethicist do? And I said, actually, I'm not really totally sure. I said I have some guesses, but What does a medical ethicist do?
So I'm a clinical medical ethicist. And so what I do is when people have difficult situations in the hospital or the clinic or the nursing home, I try to help them figure out what choices really align with their values and preferences. Um, I'm the senior, I'll retire as the senior ethicist and legal liaison for the VA's National Center for Ethics in Healthcare. So I take complex questions that people haven't been able to work out in their area, their facility, usually from other ethicists, and provide consultation on ethically justifiable options. And religion and spirituality are often a big part of those for many people, especially at the end of life. And I'm also a professor of bioethics at the Alden March Bioethics Institute. Have been for quite a few years since I finished my other doctorate there. And I teach religion and bioethics. So trying to bring our theological lens to medical and technological questions. And that's really been my career for the last 10 or 15 years.
Thank you. So I know that one of the things we're hoping to do and that you're hoping for is that people will bring to you the questions that are feeling really alive and challenging for them. But I wonder what questions are feeling most alive and challenging in terms of theology for you right now in our world and your life.
Um, well, I think the one that you brought up earlier, or the middle school student did, which is technically called theodicy, which is a defense of God's goodness and power in the face of evil and suffering, is something that's perennially compelling, but always rises to the surface when you have difficult times, as we all are facing now. And why does God let, as the famous rabbi said, bad things happen to good people? So I think that's one that's very, very big. The other is there for decades has been a decline in interest in religion and spirituality, and more people would say they were spiritual and not religious. And what does that really mean? And as you know, we had coffee with a very bright young new parishioner who and discussed that. And how far can spirituality take you when you finally probably need something a little bit more substantial, as in religion, because really there's no religion that isn't communal. And so it's pretty hard. Even the monks who, in the early days of Christianity, sat out there by themselves, eventually figured out, oh, this isn't working. Really need to go find some other monks to hang out with. So I think how do we make our very ancient tradition meaningful to people who are searching? I think people are not finding answers in all the things that they thought they would find them in. And that could be everything from materialism to, alternative cultural views. There's so many ways and places that people look. But I think that we have something really to offer. And how do you dust off, or in some cases scrape off, all the the rust and the corruption and the of what's happened to the tradition over the years, and how do you separate what humans do, which is not always good, from what God continues to try to do. So you and I have talked a lot about how many presentations of Christianity are very judgmental and rejecting and punitive, when I think that's not at all the what Scripture or in the Episcopal Church, fortunately, tradition and reason tell us. And I could go on and on.
Thank you. So like most things at St. Mark's, we are really rely heavily on the Spirit to lead us. We like to get into things without really knowing what we're getting into. So that's 100% what we're doing here.
Right.
We're going to be having a few opportunities between now and Christmas for folks at St. Mark's to begin to get to know you, for you to begin to get to know them a little more deeply. And we can listen for where the Spirit is leading our inquiry. You're going to teach a class on Zoom during the Advent season. It'll just be 3 sessions, I think. Um, and we'll record it for folks who aren't free on Tuesdays at 11:30, but there will be kind of a class. That'll be one venue. We'll also have a couple of, I think, Saturday theology cafes, we're calling them, which are just going to be drop-in groups for folks to just bring questions and for us to just talk together informally about, and from that, again, get a sense of where is their energy, where is their curiosity, where might we want to do some more deep dives, and then figure out how do we make that available both to those folks here at St. Mark's and in the larger community and in the wider diocese, because people everywhere are struggling with deep, hard life and death, heaven and earth questions, and that's just not a thing that we can only go so far alone. And navigating those territories, it's helpful to have a guide who has studied some of the guidebooks and some of the maps and can say, people have fallen in this hole a lot over the last 2,000 years. So let's step carefully around that hole and poke it a little before we jump right in. So we're just looking forward to getting to know you and looking forward to seeing how this is one more source of life and growth and connection here at St. Mark's. Right. And that there may be also an opportunity for folks to make appointments to meet with you one-on-one if they have questions they're struggling with and feel like they'd really like a little bit more one-on-one conversation. And so
absolutely. So all of those things that we're working out now, I guess my vision, as I think I shared with you when we very first met, is St. Mark's has done the impossible because they're a growing, living church at a time that many churches are really struggling, or even not surviving. And I think that's because they're hearing that people have a need and they want to participate. They don't want to just be fed. They want to help cook the meal. And so that's what we're really about. Just as St. Mark's has done with arts, in our art gallery, and with music with Dr. Worth and the choir. I want to try to do that with all of your help and support with theology. We don't really know anyone who's kind of doing that around here. And so what I'd like to hear from parishioners and my fellow congregants is, what do you want to know and what do you want to learn about? And what kinds of courses and classes and conversations and community would you like to have, so that we can figure out, as you said, as soon as I'm more free, how to make that happen.
Awesome. I love the cooking analogy. I think that's the perfect one for us to go with. Let's get cooking.
Right.
And so thank you so much, Cynthia.
Thank you.
We are so excited about this partnership.
I'm so excited too.